There was no bigger franchise in the late 90s than Pokemon. Between the handheld games, the anime, movies, and merchandise, the series had a stranglehold on pop culture. The only thing that was missing was a console game, which was in high demand because fans wanted to catch Pokemon in glorious 3D. Nintendo would answer these pleas, though not in the manner people were expecting. Rather than catching Pokemon in the usual manner, they would instead be catching them on film. Yeah, the concept for Pokemon Snap sounds a little strange, doesn't it? It's actually kind of interesting how this game came about. HAL Labs were planning to put out a game centered around wildlife photography, but the team had a hard time finding a way to incentivize taking pictures. Someone suggested replacing the real-world animals with Pokemon, reasoning that the catch-em-all nature of the series would translate well to the game. The idea worked, and even though no one was asking for a Pokemon photography game, Pokemon Snap would become a hit. Then again, that shouldn't be a surprise. You could have slapped Pokemon's name on anything at the time, and it would have done well. Decades after the fact, however, Pokemon Snap has remained something of a cult favorite amongst fans of the series, and for good reason. While not the most exciting or exceptional game you're likely to play, it's still very good for what it is. In Pokemon Snap, you take the role of Todd Snap, a wildlife photographer who enjoys taking pictures of Pokemon in their natural habitat. Todd's skills catch the attention of Professor Oak, who hires him to assist him in the creation of a Poke Guide. Todd's role in this mission is to take pictures of the Pokemon who inhabit the creatively titled Pokemon Island, as Oak continues his research. Todd agrees, likely because he needs the paycheck and recognition, but also because Pokemon Island is said to be home to the ever-elusive Mew, who Todd is hellbent on getting a picture of. It's a pretty basic story that is really just context for the gameplay, but for what it is, it works. Effectively told too, with the mission statement and stakes being established within a couple of minutes. I think what I find most interesting about Pokemon Snap is how much influence it takes from the anime. Todd and Professor Oak, as he appears here, are taken straight from the show, and all the Pokemon sound like they do in the animated series as well. And this is one of only 2 instances where I can recall this being the case. These days, Nintendo seems to go out of their way to keep the anime and games separate, but I never understood why. It would have saved them money on having to hire voice actors, it would allow them to grant the Pokemon a higher degree of character. As a result, Pokemon Snap represents an interesting time capsule in the series, a time when the anime was just as popular, if not more so, than the games, and when Nintendo actually wanted to achieve some brand synergy. While we're on the subject of the presentation, it's damn impressive. In fact, I'd say Pokemon Snap is one of the best looking games on the N64. The environments in the game are lush, colorful, and wonderfully varied. The Pokemon all look and move great, and it's really cool to see them out in the wild, something I'm just now realizing is a rare sight in the series since most Pokemon are encountered via random battles. It's a really nice looking game, and it sounds great too, with each track in the game adding to the atmosphere of each level, and sound effects that make the experience more satisfying than it has any right to be. As for the gameplay, the game sort of takes the form of an on-rail shooting game. You hop in this high-tech buggy, which will then move on its own down a set path through the levels. As you go along your way, various types of Pokemon will be hanging out. You then take aim with your camera and try to get the best pictures possible. At the end of the level, you select what pictures you want to present to Professor Oak, who will then assess your work and award you points depending on the quality. A nice close-up, center frame shot of a Pokemon will net you a good deal of points, and you'll get bonus points if you can catch them doing something interesting, or if you can get multiple Pokemon of the same type in the frame at once. I've heard some people say that they wish they had the ability to freely explore the levels, but I feel this on-rail setup is in service of the hardware. If the game was more open-ended, the levels in their entirety would have had to have been rendered, in addition to having to run all the different AI on the Pokemon, who not only have to be doing their own thing, but would have to be programmed to react to the player. By keeping the game on rails, the game only has to worry about what's right in front of the player, and allows the Pokemon to operate on a more basic AI. Though it would have been cool to explore the levels, the on-rail setup works better for the gameplay. Not to mention the fact that it gives Pokemon Snap much better pacing. I'd imagine the game would have been painfully slow if you had to sneak up on Pokemon. The game also sports a pretty strong sense of progression. Not only is it satisfying to cross Pokemon off the list, or take better pictures of ones you already have, but as the game goes on, new levels will unlock, and Oak will provide you with new tools that will allow you to better interact with the Pokemon. I'm probably making Pokemon Snap out to be some kind of masterpiece, but the game for sure has some big issues. The big one for me is that the game is short. This is another one that I was able to knock out in an hour or two, which is good for my workload, but not for the game's appeal. In fact, Pokemon Snap could have been shorter. Upon reaching the end of the second to last level, Oak informs you of the Poke Signs, which are landmarks in that level that resemble Pokemon. This requires you to go back through the levels to see if you can find them all. It feels like padding, which is weird to say in a game this short. Pokemon Snap is another game I would say is living its best life as part of Nintendo Switch Online. This is the type of game you decide to spend an afternoon on before putting it down and getting on with your day.
Wow! Well done!
Though a lot of people looked at Pokemon Snap as a joke when it came out, it was still really popular. However, fans kept asking for a proper 3D Pokemon game, and it never came. Instead, there were a couple of other spin-offs like Pokemon Puzzle League, Hey You Pikachu, and the Pokemon Stadium games. The third one is the closest thing to what people wanted, but it's just a means to bring your Pokemon from the handheld games into 3D via the transfer pack, assuming you can get the damn things to work. It wouldn't be until the GameCube that we started to get proper 3D RPGs. But it was then that fans realized that the third dimension doesn't add a great deal to the experience. Now the handhelds and consoles are one and the same, so people seem to have lost interest in the idea. As for Pokemon Snap, the game has maintained a solid cult following in the years since its release. Though I don't think anyone is going to point to this as the best game on the console or anything like that, people still look back fondly on the game as a unique entry in the series. Pokemon Snap will get a sequel in 2021 in the form of New Pokemon Snap. It too would be a critical and commercial success, though I personally found it to be a little too slow and repetitive for my taste. Still, it's nice to see that people still have positive things to say about the series. It may have been a joke at the expense of fans, but I think that's precisely why there are so many out there who have a soft spot for it.